So Eric, we all have
Yeah.
heroes.
Yes.
We have Batman, we have Superman.
Batman, Superman,
Some of us, though not many, have Green Lantern. Um,
Green Lantern.
some people like Aquaman. You know, there's
I
there's
I really
all
wish that I would have like gotten a bunch of superhero things so I could just be like when you say the different superheroes, I could be like, oh yeah, I have a
right,
Green
right, right, right,
Lantern
right, right.
ring. I have
Yeah,
like Superman underneath this.
yeah.
We need to do that at some
You're
point
like
now.
you have the
Anyway.
Green Lantern that you hold up. Yes. So, um, we all have heroes, Eric. We all have
hmm
people that we look up to. Some of them are super, some of them aren't super. Some of them are just kind of dudes or blokes or guys or gals. Um, more so guys for me probably because I am one. Um,
Yeah,
but
probably
anyway,
same for
we
me.
look up to these people and we think, man, maybe I could do something someday like what they do. And maybe, you know, maybe that person inspires us to do great things and build great creations and that sort of thing. So, with that being said, what we're talking about today is we are talking about our creative heroes. Um, you know, it's the energy is very different on this show, Eric. You know, they never
Mm.
know if it's gonna be like hyper crazy Eric and Cademan or if it's gonna be more quiet, peaceful Cademan and Eric.
Yeah,
I feel like this is a day where they're getting more quiet and peaceful, Cademan and Eric. You know,
I think
um,
so. I'm definitely very quiet and peaceful right now.
yeah, you look like it. Which
Yep.
Batman
I'm also Batman.
arguably is the most quiet and peaceful superhero. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I think you could say that.
I just kind of wanted to have um like a little chitty chat just about the people who inspired us, um, and how we look up to them and why we look up to them, and maybe some ways we don't look up to them. Um,
Yeah.
So, like, I have a number of guys, of people that I've thought
Okay.
of that I see as like, um, you know, sort of people who have inspired me the most, let's say. Um, so we can definitely talk about all of those people that I have in mind. But let's start with you if you can. Do you have anyone in mind or anything, I guess, that you feel like has really inspired you on like your creative journey or even like just in life has like sort of, shown you um, how you can do stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. So my kind of first thought when you first mentioned this idea was
Mhm.
C.S. Lewis.
Mm,
Uh and like I will say that like I'm not always the biggest fan of like all of his work. I think it's
mhm,
all really good, but it doesn't always necessarily like it's not necessarily always my favorite, I guess.
mhm,
Um but I think from C.S. Lewis I kind of was like I kind of learned with like Narnia and the stuff that he's done. Um did you leave?
No, no, you can keep talking. I just had to check
Okay.
something to make sure it was going.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of learned that like you can put I guess Christ into stories without it in like allegorical ways
Mm,
without it taking away from a story. Because I think for a while I kind of was like, okay, you can either have God in a story with and you are limited by that, or you can have like an actual fantasy story that's actually kind of fun.
Mm,
And that was something that like for a while I kind of had that idea of like, oh, you can't really just put Christ into stories without it being weird, uh, or overly cheesy, I guess. And then like with Narnia, I kind of was thinking about it at one point. And I was like, well, this does it really well.
mm.
And I think that C.S. Lewis has kind of done that with all of his works, which I have not read uh, a lot of his other fantasy stuff, but yeah, that was the first person who came to mind for
Yeah,
that.
I think I'm so glad you mentioned old C.S. Louis, um, because he was also on my list. Though interestingly,
Oh,
for kind of different reasons. Um, because I'm not as big of a fan of like Narnia or um uh his like fiction writing style. Um,
yeah,
though I think part of it is that like um I do kind of like it because I relate to it where I feel like sometimes he sort of uh just gets a little too like lost just in like his random interests, throwing those into the
yeah,
book. And sometimes it
I
can
can
be like,
definitely see that.
yeah, like you're reading about how food tastes for like just a little too long and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
there's part of me that like kind of relates to that, where like that's kind of a problem I have when I'm writing as well. Um, but the
yeah,
big thing with C.S. Lewis is writing like his apologetic works,
yeah,
like Mere Christianity and like the Screwtape Letters. I would kind of put in that category, even though it's like
yeah.
technically
That's
fiction.
that's kind
Um,
of like in the middle, I think,
yeah,
between the fiction ones and his
yeah, for
like
sure.
actual.
Um, but yeah, like his sort of like theology and stuff like that has
Yeah,
really it really sort of helped me to have, I think, a more healthy outlook on that stuff, and um, I think encouraged me to take a closer look at a lot of things, which I feel like,
mm,
unfortunately, a lot of people aren't encouraging that, right?
yeah,
Like, it's a big problem with the church, which I think, I believe is kind of a hangover from the public school system. Or maybe it's just a
mm,
problem with both. I don't know. But
yeah,
um, the problem is that the church teaches kids to memorize and not, it doesn't teach kids to actually have thoughts, right? Which is the same
yeah,
problem with public school. Um,
hmm,
is like, you don't teach kids to actually think or understand things, think critically. You just teach them to memorize answers so they'll be able to pass the
yeah,
test. And there's something very valuable that we lose out through that. So, with that being said, I feel like C.S. Lewis is one of those who really encourages sort of critical thinking and stuff like that, which I can respect a lot. So
yeah.
that's sort of why old C.S. Louis holds a place in my heart, I guess you could say. Um,
Okay, yeah. That is really interesting. That like you kind of gave like a completely different
mhm.
reasoning than I did.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, though. I think part of that is mostly just because I think I'm more familiar with his like fiction
Hmm.
or and less with his theological stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. So do you have anyone else in mind, or?
Um, I did think of George Lucas, but I feel like with
Mm,
George Lucas, it's very more like indirect because I think you could say I think I would usually just say I was inspired by Star Wars
mhm,
um a lot, especially when I was younger. But I think still it kind of the impact that it's had has kind of gone through all of the art that I've made since um I watched through the original trilogy. Probably I want to say,
mm.
and maybe even before that because I've always really liked Star Wars. But I think
I don't like
I
Star
can't
Wars.
really. Yeah, I know. That's why you have all the
That's
VHSs on
that's why I
your
have two sets of VHSs right here.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you can just look at them and feel upset when you're
exactly.
bored or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
mhm,
I don't know the exact impact that's had, but I think that like it kind of shows up in different things, and I've kind of noticed that with like different creative influences, like kind of just sort of just randomly will pop up in different things I make, and I'm like,
mm,
oh hey, this is like similar to this other thing, and I'm just like copying it, and I didn't even like realize, but it's just because I like this thing so much that I'm just like taking ideas from it
right.
without noticing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of what it is with Star Wars or George Lucas.
Yeah.
So
I think I think that is true where it's like I'm because like of course like I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who, um,
yeah,
as well as Star Trek, I think would fit into this category. Um, but like any of the makers behind them, like I don't have,
hmm,
nothing against any of them, but I don't have like a whole lot of
yeah,
respect for them, right? I see things I like in the art and I want to imitate that.
yeah,
And I can like have an amount of like I admire the creator, the artist for that. Um, but I think also with Star Wars, a lot of what I like about it is doesn't really have to do with George Lucas, right? It's just
yeah,
like this sort of like pulpy science fiction that he pulled from that really gels with me. Um,
yeah. I think that's
so
kind of the same for me, where it's like
yeah.
I can't think of anything specific with
Now,
George Lucas necessarily, but
on the topic though of science fiction people involved in the science fiction space,
mhm,
um, Rod Serling, I think, is someone that I do have a lot of respect for. Um, which, if you're unfamiliar, I know you're not, but this is for the viewers.
yeah,
Um, but if you're unfamiliar, Rod Serling was the creator behind the Twilight Zone. And um, it's really funny because I feel like a lot of people don't really know what the Twilight Zone is, where they hear it and they think like, oh, like sort of old, like outdated horror is, I think, usually the general
mm,
thought, which it definitely is
yeah,
that, but it's also, um, or like, the weird science fiction elements. And again, it definitely is that, but
yeah,
also it's philosophy and it's political and it's all these things. And that's what Rod Serling wanted to do is he wanted to make a show that would allow people to think. So again, much like C.S. Lewis,
mhm,
another person that like just encouraged like giving critical thought to stuff through their art, and like I think
yeah,
there's an element of this where it's like people are too scared to be preachy now in movies.
mm, mhm,
Um, so then we sort of lose uh, that sort of like philosophical theming that made the
Yeah.
Twilight Zone what it is. Um, so yeah, I mean he's definitely um, up there. Oftentimes when I think of like who I want to be creatively, like the thought that comes into my mind is I'm like I want to be like a Christian Rod Serling. Um,
Mm.
so
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that's interesting.
that
I I kind of have a lot of respect for Rod Serling, but I feel like I probably wouldn't necessarily put him in like my top like
mm,
inspirations or anything. But yeah, I think
yeah.
what he does is really cool. And from what I've seen of the Twilight Zone, I think the Twilight Zone's really cool, and I think the audience should go watch it if they haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And I do say this about the Twilight Zone because like is it
Uh-huh.
like is it a lot of stuff that sort of feels cheesy by modern standards? Well, for sure.
Yeah,
But also a surprising amount of the episodes hold up surprisingly well. You know,
yeah,
like there is some of them for sure that you have to like sort of accept it as being from a different time. But then there's other ones that I'm like, that's a really good story, even by like modern standards. Um, so
yeah.
yeah. Do you have anyone else that sort of comes to mind?
Sort of. This one's kind of a little bit like the other one I thought of is kind of a little bit um less really about the art, but more about like well, I the one I was thinking of also was Walt Disney,
Mm,
and I'm not always like a huge fan of like a lot of the things that Walt Disney actually acted in, not acted in, uh, created back when he was actually creating stuff for the
right.
Walt Disney Company, but um I really like he has a lot of very admirable traits of like
Mm,
he literally like would work on this cartoon or something and then it would completely fail, but like despite every time that like something didn't go right, he kept doing it and now he has
mm.
like probably one of the biggest companies in the world and that's very
Well, he does it.
inspiring and
He
makes me
is
think.
super dead, but
Yeah. Yeah, he
small,
had it
small
and
fact
then
check there.
yeah.
Walt Disney is not frozen, contrary to popular belief. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think for sure we can look and see there's things that Walt Disney did in like business stuff that we probably don't want to
Yeah.
imitate, where it's like overworking people and underpaying and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but for sure, like he is like a and I'm really big into animation, so like you
Mhm.
can't talk about animation and like the history of animation and evolution of it
Yeah.
without like tipping your hat to Walt. Um,
Yeah.
because like Disney is such um, like a foundational part of the history of animation. And for
Yeah.
sure, there's like um, like there's other great animation, uh, like probably prior to Disney, and there's great animation that's like, it's like from Japan, so like probably Disney had little influence on it. Um,
Mhm.
but no, you definitely can't argue that like animation would be the same without Walt Disney.
Yeah.
So, and just uh, like the other thing you said is like he would make things and then they would keep failing, but like he would just like keep making things and new ideas and stuff like that. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that is sort of like an admirable uh, sort of creative thing to just like not
Yeah.
not just decide something's not working and like throw out the baby with the
Yeah.
bathwater, so to speak. Um,
And it's really interesting, like, to how much courage it takes to like make some put your like entire heart into making this great thing only for it to fail.
mhm,
But like even after that, like it just being like, okay, well, I guess it's time to move on to the next thing. It's
mhm.
like creating something that you think is amazing and then it not working out, and then being able to just persevere and like
Right.
make a new thing that turns that eventually something new does work. And
Mhm,
then it's like it's really crazy. But a lot of like artists who actually make it, besides people who are super lucky,
mhm.
that's what happens is they'll make a lot of really bad stuff first that they like love a
Yeah,
lot and put a lot of effort into, and then eventually they uh hit something that
for sure.
actually is like
Well,
really awesome.
and also I think um like I'm going to use this as a segue, but a lot of times like
Okay.
some of the most influential people um didn't do what they set out to do, right? They
Yeah.
like so like Elvis Presley wanted to be an actor,
Hmm.
right? Like that was his dream. Um,
Yeah.
and he was eventually able to kind of do a version of that. But I don't think it's too controversial to say that Elvis wasn't the most happy, probably, in most of the movies that he acted in. Um,
Yeah.
but though there is one or two that are actually very good. Um,
Oh, okay.
and another example, Stan Lee. This is the segue.
Mm,
But Stan
gotcha.
Lee wanted to be like, a serious big boy author. He wanted to be a novelist. Um,
Yeah.
and then he just kind of, uh, got a job for, pre-Marvel Marvel, and then, stuck around long enough to become in charge of it. And then he created uh, like the most influential
Hmm.
franchise in the modern day, right? I,
Yeah.
I mean, sure, he has nothing to do with the MCU, but he did create those characters that people
Hmm.
just latch onto and love so much. Um, Now, a lot of people would say, oh, but Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, right? And like Stanley just kind of stole from them.
Hmm.
And, you know, to be fair, somewhat probably true. If you look at
Yeah.
like conversations between those people, that seems like it's probably the case. But also, there is something in the way that Stanley was able to sell a character, you know, right? Like, he was able
Yeah.
to, um, like a New York, like used cars salesman, he was able to say, "The Amazing
Yeah.
Spider-Man," and like that coming from Steve Ditko's voice, like just wouldn't have been as appealing, right? Um, and
Yeah.
like you look at Spider-Man uh, written by Steve Ditko because there was a
Hmm.
period of time when it was written by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee wasn't involved at all, and it's not as good. And also, like on that note, there is like, it's not too big of a stretch to say that I don't think Spider-Man just by Stan Lee without Steve Ditko involved, I don't think that would be very good either. Um,
Yeah.
so it's
That
one of
makes
those
sense.
things where it's like, uh, when people sort of come together and work together on things, you make something really, really good. And that's sort of what I like about Stanley is that he was just so able to utilize other people's talent. Now, I think the problem with Stanley is he wasn't good enough at giving credit where it was due, right?
Hmm.
Like, that kind of seems to be where like Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby's issues with Stanley were, is
Yeah.
that, he sort of seemed like he was taking all of the credit. Um, but I think there is something to that where it's like seeing other people's talent and being able to be like, you know, we can make something with that and we can make something that will, connect with children after we're all
Hmm.
dead, you know. Um, so it's right,
Yeah.
like I don't think it's a stretch to say that like Stan Lee created one of the most um, influential characters ever. If
Yeah.
if not several, uh,
Yeah.
and the fact that that wasn't even what he set out to do is just so interesting. But
Yeah. It is really
like
interesting.
the superhero genre would probably barely exist today if it wasn't for Stanley.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I love Stanley. I think he was great.
Yeah. Um, on the topic of superheroes,
Hmm.
um, I guess one other thought I had was Christopher Nolan, and
Mm.
this is connected to superheroes because he did Batman Begins.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I don't know like if I would necessarily like put him necessarily like really high up on a chart of like
Right.
who my biggest creative influences are, but
Hmm.
and I haven't seen a lot of his movies, but watching like interviews with him and him explaining like how he makes his story is really interesting, and like he puts so much effort and detail into them that it's like every movie of his is like heavily structured, and he creates these like movies that feel like masterpieces
Right.
almost. um and it's also really interesting like looking back, like I don't know how much you know about Christopher Nolan, but like he never went to film school or anything and pretty
Hmm.
much like just got lucky and ended up starting making movies at some point, which he always wanted to make movies, which is a little bit where he's kind of different from the other uh people that we mentioned, like Stanley, where it's like he wanted to be an author. But um it's interesting like to look at I don't know. It's really interesting to look at interviews where he's able to just explain like, the philosophy and how he puts meaning into movies, and it watching any of his movies feels like you're watching something way bigger than like like I guess a good comparison is like when I watched Batman Begins for the first time, I
Hmm.
kind of was expecting it to be like an MCU movie,
Yeah.
because that was like the main kind of superhero movies I had seen at that point.
Hmm.
But it feels so much bigger than an MCU movie,
Mm.
and it kind of has this like very more grounded feeling, and I think it's done very well. But
Yeah. I
I
think
don't have much else to say about Christopher Nolan.
I think with Mr. Nolan, I think
Hmm.
the thing that he doesn't, because like I'm not the biggest fan of the Dark Knight trilogy. I
Yeah,
do like them, um,
yeah,
but I think particularly the Dark Knight um, is like, don't stone me or anything, but a little bit overrated. But also,
Yeah.
what is great about that movie is the theming and how like every
Hmm.
part of like every character sort of plays into that theming. Um, because
Yeah.
like the question that that movie asks is, is there bad people and good people, right? Like that's the question,
Yeah.
and then how that sort of plays into like, uh, well, yes, because the Joker is just a bad guy, right? And can a good person
Mm.
turn into a bad person? Yes, because Two-Face, but also no, because Jim Gordon, right? And like,
Yeah.
it sort of asks the question and like plays into that question without necessarily telling you exactly what to believe. And that's
Hmm.
really cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
we're
Christopher Nolan
mhm,
definitely does that kind of like I guess kind of like background kind of theming where it's like you don't there's not necessarily always a character arc or a like big this is the moral of the story kind of
mhm,
thing. But he does it really well. And I think even with Interstellar, like
right.
that's Interstellar is a really interesting thing. So you'd have to see it to kind of
Yeah,
but the messaging in that movie is also really interesting. So
yeah. Um, so we're about out of time. Um,
okay.
so I don't know if there's anyone else you wanted to mention real quick. Um,
I don't
yeah.
think I have anything
So
else.
I mean, I think that's about everyone that I had in mind to mention. So, those are kind of our heroes. Um, you know, this was a fun thing to talk about, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Um,
Yep.
just sort of because
Bye,
like
audience.
goodbye. Yeah, there's so many people that like we can take inspiration from. And I love just
Yeah.
talking about things and people that I love. So, yep. All right, goodbye.
All right.
Like the video
Bye,
and let
audience.
us know below who your heroes are.